This is the complete season 1 of Burned Notice. Enjoy. And before we get into the episode, I hate when TV shows don't name the first episode. It's lazy when they just call it the pilot. Seriously, you can't name the episode. Even just calling the first episode the name of the series would still be lazy, but at least it's somewhat original. Anyway, this is the pilot episode of Burn Notice, and it starts with Michael Weston waiting for the Warlord's henchmen to pick him up. And we also get introduced to Michael's narration, a mainstay of the series that explains how Michael's brain works. Upon meeting the Warlord and offering to pay him $750,000, the plan goes awry when Michael is burned, which is a fancy way of saying getting fired, but also freezes his bank accounts and takes away his assets. And this is the first of many times he should have died in this series, so I'm just going to set up a counter for every time he should have died, because seriously, they would have just killed him. And also, why would an agency send him on a mission and then fire him? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, even low-level jobs fire you at the end of the shift. But anyway, Michael lies and fights the henchmen and kills his assailants, which is kind of weird, especially in the later seasons where he tries the best he can not to kill anybody. But anyway, he ends up on an airplane taking him to Miami, where we are introduced to Fiona, Michael's ex, but also an ex-IRA agent who will be known for her love of explosives and shoe shopping. But she calls Madeline Michael's mom, who becomes a tangential part of the crew, but is annoying right now. And due to the fact Michael has a desire to get his job back and leave, he's not too thrilled about his mom knowing his whereabouts. But now he has FBI agents following him that Fiona helps him lose.
Come on, make one of those scenes of yours, Bite one of them, set the other on fire. Just do it in about 10 minutes. I need to clean up.
After he loses them, he tries to get a hotel room but fails, goes to the bank to find out he has no money. Next, he tries using a payphone to contact his old boss, but gets nowhere due to the burn notice. But Michael gets a hotel room in Party Central to differentiate the police tales. A smart move, but definitely temporary. As he leaves, he notices the same feds, so he uses some kids to distract them and slip away yet again, and ends up using a disguise to meet with an old contact to find a job. And we meet Lucy, who is a semi-recurring character, and she gives Michael a job to get some money together. And that's when we meet Sam, a washed out Navy SEAL played by the king of B movies, the one and only Bruce Campbell, and at first is just the right hand man to Michael and someone just chasing skirts, but he becomes the super ego of the series, always appealing to the good of Michael. And since Sam is washed out, he doesn't care to mingle with the most radioactive man in Florida. Michael then meets with the first client, Javier, who is blamed for a burglary at work, and we see Michael's compassion for doing the job on the cheap.
You want me to figure out who ran off with $22 million and stuff, catch the bad guys, clear your name, all for, what is it, $4,500?
$4,600.
Oh, well, that's much better.
And while questioning the boss, Michael notices the safe has a fingerprint scanner. It is subtle, but it works for a scene in the future. Next, we meet the head of security, a meathead who blames Javier. Next, we see Michael finding a permanent place to stay, and Oleg, the manager, furthers Michael's legendary presence by talking about him like a godly entity, and typical Western fashion, he dismisses it, showing humbleness. Also, we get introduced to the Loft, which is home for most of the series. It doubles as a workshop, a place to stash people, and kind of a base of operations. While Michael is getting comfortable, however, Madeline calls Michael for a favor, and during this, we get some important background information about Michael's home life as a kid, and introduces his brother Nate by name alone, who is a reoccurring character. Michael calls his handler to no avail and basically threatens if he doesn't call him back, he's going to do something, and decides to ship a bomb with no explosives. We meet David, Javier's kid, who doesn't understand what Michael does, but forms a sort of bond together, and it's lucky Sam still has connections to figure out the background on the head of security. And then we get introduced to Barry, a money launderer that helps Michael in different situations even after this episode. Michael's handler does eventually call him to inform Michael of the rules of the burn notice. The handler doesn't make that many more appearances. I don't think he ever makes another appearance, so he's just his handler. Next, we officially meet Michael's neighbor, a 2-bit drug dealer who tries to intimidate Michael, and due to Michael's earlier injuries, he gets the slight upper hand. But Michael twists his arm, and Sugar taps. But it doesn't get rid of Sugar for good, and not just in this episode, but in future episodes, Michael's injuries actually do prevent him from getting jobs done, which is a nice touch. Normally, a show would completely forget that he had an injury the very next episode. It doesn't last very long for the injuries that he does get, but it is a nice touch. Now, with the use of Barry's contact, he assumes that the boss stole the art and tried to sell it and collect the insurance to double dip, with Javier taking the fall. All but confirmed when Michael breaks in to make copies of the paperwork and breaking into the aforementioned safe using silly putty. Javier agrees to let Michael continue the job, and he shows the boss the paperwork to blackmail him. Michael then creates a listening device using 2 phones. The weird thing is, I don't think he ever pays for a service carrier. Not bad, just weird. Next, Fiona and Michael go on a date, and he admits she is the closest thing to a relationship, and 3 feds ruin the evening. Sugar hires a gunman that fails completely, showing Fee has the ability to take down assailants twice her size. After a quick trip to the hardware store, Michael devises a plan to force Sugar out. But this isn't the last we see of him. After that, Michael and Sam plant the listening device using Fee and a taxi driver. Spy work is mostly smoke and mirrors and distractions. While visiting his mother, the boss is trying to kidnap Javier's son. Luckily, Mike rams the security guard and saves the kid. While at the loft, Mike helps the kid fight his bullies by teaching him how to fight, proving that psychology works on both bullies and thieves. Mike follows Sam to a meeting with the FBI and gets to know who's actually following him, who is Agent Harris and Agent Lane, who follow Mike for the first season and show up here and there after. Mike is only slightly upset over Sam informing on him, reinforcing their relationship as a long-term friendship, and shows the level of trust Sam and Mike have with each other. As the job continues, Michael sets the house up for battle, and he finally fights the security guard and tricks the boss into shooting him, basically keeping the boss under Mike's thumb, giving Javier a fantastic lump sum of money and a college fund for his kid. As Mike is wrapping everything up, he sees the kid fight off his bullies, and finally Mike goes back to the loft to find pictures of him scattered across the floor, proving other people are watching him other than just the FBI. This episode is a great start to the series, giving us plenty of answers and asking enough questions to keep people hooked. When we last left Michael, he was spooked about the fact someone other than the FBI was watching him, and he is looking to get to the bottom of it, and the only one who can help is his mother, when we figure out where Michael learned his powers of deception. Maddie stalls out long enough for Michael to find a listening device and figures out, due to the range of it and help from his mom, where the operatives were. He runs to the house, alerting them of his presence, and they torch their equipment and speed off, leaving Michael and us asking questions once Michael gets back to his mom's house. Maddie is withholding information to force Michael to help her friend, Laura, to get money scammed from her back. And unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of information about what they look like, but the certificate had to be made in only a few different places when Mike enlists Sam's help for letting Sam stay at the loft for a small amount of time. Next, we see Fiona stretched out in Michael's bed. She stopped using an Irish accent, which she used in the first episode, but only comes back very rarely in a few episodes in the future. And we also find out why in the last episode Sam and Fee didn't meet up, due to a gun cell soiled by Sam, giving us backstory that makes the team seem to have a longer history and is also an organic way for character development. This is when Fee tags along to help Mike and Sam by going to print shops in town to smoke out some of the lower members of the Scoundrels team, which works, and Mike follows him to find Quentin and his partners Greg and Bonnie. Thankfully, Sam did some snooping, figuring out where the leader hangs out, and develops a cover ID for Michael, the first of many in the series. This one is an ex-con who shared a cell with someone Quentin shared with, giving him a potential trusted mutual friend. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, so Michael uses Quentin's gun to hold him up when Michael shoots the tires of a police car and runs off, proving he isn't an undercover agent. After the initial meeting, Mike goes straight to work making listening devices, and during their second meeting, Sam and Fee rig Quentin's car to shut off after a single phone call and plant listening devices on the con man's boat. During the meeting, Michael gives Quentin his gun back as a sign of good faith and proposes a different scam. However, Quentin isn't jumping on it, but Greg seems extremely interested, and after showing that, Quentin forces Greg and Bonnie back to the boat where Sam and Fee are still bugging and getting as much information as possible on the villain's team, and Mike tries to warn them to get out, but Fee doesn't have her phone on her and have to get creative. When Fee spots Greg and Bonnie, that's when Sam and Fee create a cover story, giving them 1, a reason to be there, and 2, a reason to leave quickly, by saying Sam lied about this boat being his, and Fee getting irate about him lying, showing ingenuity and quick thinking. Next, Michael, Sam, and Fiona debrief and attempt a plan that makes Quentin's trust in Greg and Bonnie break down, just enough to make Mike a tangible option. Also, Mike asks Fee to a dinner at his mom's house to try to get more information on the guys who were spying on him, and luckily Fee agrees. Then Mike goes to the nightclub again to meet with Quentin, and we get the next half point on Michael's death count. Only a half because he had a 50-50 shot on the question. Sam is working on the paperwork to push Quentin over the edge, while Mike is at dinner with Fee. We get a short glimpse of the client who asks uncomfortable questions to Fee, and she plays it off cool, but Maddie also gives her the third degree, and Michael gains some info on the men spying. However, Maddie lied to the men, guilt-tripping Mike. Unfortunately, Quentin finds the paperwork a touch too soon and gets into a murderous mood, with Michael even being able to hear his gun being racked over the phone.
You've been in the business way too long when you recognize the sound of a .45 caliber over a phone.
Sam goes to the marina to keep tabs on Quentin, and Fee didn't quite disable the car. She turned it into...
That's what happens when you wire a cell phone to a blasting cap in the gas tank instead of the electrical system.
Son of a bitch!
and explosive, scaring Quentin into hiding, assuming Greg and Bonnie, or Michael, were trying to kill him. Also part of Sam's agreement was to keep the FBI at bay if he could stay with him. But due to the explosions at the marina, the feds are back on Michael's tail. And this was all due to the fact that Sam didn't completely understand the minutia of the travel he booked. And Greg and Bonnie received a bottle of champagne that forced Quentin to look around, and he found all of the evidence that was supposed to be trickled out to Quentin. That leaves Michael with only one move: to go back to the nightclub to try to find Quentin's number. And luckily, the ladies of the nightclub provide him the number, and they set a meet where Michael convinced Quentin to hire a hitman to kill his partners. That's when Fee and Sam use police badges to scare Greg and Bonnie to ditch Miami. Then Michael uses his FBI tail to terrify Quentin into giving him his bank information. And Mike not only gets the money back, but also gets Quentin arrested for making calls to different organizations. And with the day being saved, Mike originally asks for $500, but his mom side-eyes him for only $3. That's when Maddie reveals a number to Michael, and after a short conversation, we only learn a little bit more than we had known previously. This episode ends on on a cliffhanger, which is something you want in a spy thriller. But all in all, this episode was an interesting way to further the mystery of the burn notice and highlight Fee and Sam's skills, and also how easily Michael can become someone completely different. We last left Mike after he answered a call from someone who possibly helped burn him, but unfortunately he doesn't learn anything about him. However, this episode starts with Michael doing some intel gathering with Fee during a conference while he is being followed by a different set of FBI agents, and he is caught snooping, so is forced to run.
Locked and plenty of exits.
The fire hazard.
And he chooses to jump off a building, hurting his ankle. Next we see Fiona at the loft, leaving Michael to walk home, which forces Fee and Mike to talk about Fee getting a key and Michael getting a car, ultimately ending without a resolution when Michael, leaving the loft, meets his landlord, Oleg, who offers him a job with 2 months' rent being his payment. But Michael haggles for 4 months to help Oleg's bartender, Kara, who is the newest client. She witnessed somebody getting beat to almost death, and she is the only witness that went to the police, and they didn't protect her, which makes me upset. The term is witness protection, not mark for death and leave, especially since the adversary is high up in the drug trade, but I guess the lack of police involvement is due to the villains paying off the police. Anyway, these guys are tracking not only Kara, but her daughter, Sophie. Next, Mike is trying to convince Fee to follow the spy Mike found earlier at the convention by promising Fee he would ask his mom about the car that his dad left him, thus bringing the Charger into the team, a pseudo-member of the team. Unfortunately, it doesn't start because of missing spark plugs. After that, Sam meets with Mike to discuss the case, and Sam is tasked with finding more about the villains and ultimately finds out the name and where he hangs out. Alvaro DeSantis is the guy who beat up that person, and Mike is trying to intimidate him, but Mike is outnumbered, so he sneak attacks the guys and adds a count on him should be dying. However, he escapes and warns Fee at Kara's place that men are coming to kill her, and in true Fee fashion, she attacks them with Molotov cocktails, sending the hit squad away for the moment. Also, this scene is where I learned how to make Molotovs. Anyway, Mike suggests to move them. Unfortunately, they can't stay at Mike's, so the only option is Maddie's garage. Before he sets up the motion sensors, he talks to his mom, who asks Mike to see his dad's grave, which gives Mike a mixed emotion because his father is why he is who he is, but the road to becoming a one-man wrecking crew came with a price of abuse. However, Mike creates a motion sensor that will call him by combining a motion-activated light and a cell phone, also creating an opening for Kara and Sophie to escape, and adding an electric door handle to at least slow any would-be captors. Next, Mike goes over the rules to Sophie and Kara, with Sophie, a teen, finding the rules stupid, and Mike reassures her that this is the best option for them to survive. And Sophie has this to say.
Whatever, it's a freaking garage. I'd rather be killed than live here.
Well, those are your two options.
And Sophie wants to go to a dance, but Mike forbids it because the bad guys could track her there. After that, Mike meets up with Sam to get more info on DeSantis and learns of his lawyer, Gelman, who is the lawyer for the cartel DeSantis works for. Next, Mike creates a spike strip when Oleg asks about the job. After Mike finishes with Oleg, his spike strips stop the lawyer for a chat, and Mike tries to strong-arm Gelman to get DeSantis to back off of Kara. After the meeting, Mike meets Fee to learn about the spy. Mike needs to get info on the burn notice, which Fee isn't too keen on because the sooner Mike learns about the burn notice, the quicker he leaves Miami. Foreshadowing their dance of will he, won't he, when in the future giving the chance to leave will be a difficult one because it's either take the job and leave Fee or reject the job and stay with Fee. Back to talking to Gelman, who didn't make it to the meeting, but instead sent a hitman. And I'm sure you're wanting another point for the Michael Weston death count, but sadly, he doesn't get one because he was watching the hitman and disabled the bomb, so no point. And Mike confronts the hitman and threatens him to talk. And the bad news is getting worse because El Jefe, the boss of the cartel, wants everyone involved dead, leaving Kara and Sophie only one option to flee Miami, infuriating Sophie, who asks Fee,
"Can't you do something? Didn't you say you were better at tactical whatever than he is?"
What? I am.
I find this scene funny because Mike is way better tactically, not just in this episode, but in previous episodes as well. And Michael goes into more detail of leaving Miami. Fee then plants evidence at Kara's house, directing them to Salt Lake City, and while she is working, she asks about the key to the loft. Ultimately, Mike succumbs to this to try and save Fee, and she gets out fine. Mike tells Kara and Sophie where they're going to, and Sophie storms off. Next, Fee finds the spy is going to dinner, the perfect opportunity for Mike to ask for a favor, because this spy doesn't want his cover blown. That's when Mike asks for the Homeland Security directive that authorized his burn notice. Begrudgingly, the spy accepts because of Mike's knowledge of the spy's action against his dinner guests. But during the exchange, Mike's phone rings, signifying someone is at the safe house. However, it was Sophie sneaking out, and Mike gets Sam to rush over, with Mike having to go to the school to find Sophie and protect her from the henchmen. Mike sets a trap and sends Sophie away, which could have bit Michael in the butt because he isn't 100% sure these are the only henchmen that were sent here, but it does make sense not to fight with Sophie in the room. One stray bullet and the mission's over. After fighting off the goons, he steals spark plugs. Also, because he set up the trap, he doesn't get another point on his death counter. Mike does reconnect with Sophie, and he goes over his backstory about Fee to Sophie. Again, furthering his long sordid history and reassuring Sophie that she will find the guy again. But this escape forces Mike to go on the offensive by using the FBI and some recut footage to make it seem like DeSantos is flipping on the cartel. Also, this is the first use of Chuck Finley as a cover ID, and this is going to be Sam's go-to cover for the remainder of the series. Anyway, after recording the convo, they splice the vocals and drop it off to the feds. Also, Sam informs on Mike, but it doesn't go super in-depth. Next, we see that Mike meets up with Gelman to scare him, getting Gelman to talk to the FBI and finding the tape of DeSantos wanting to flip on the cartel, which does put DeSantos on the #1 of the cartel's hit list, never to be seen or heard from again. Next, we see Mike give Fiona a key to the loft. Kara and Sophie meet up with Mike again to say thanks for saving them. Sophie remarks on the charger, and Michael starts it up. Finally, Mike goes to see his father's grave to meet up with the spy for the intel, ending this episode with a little bit more about the burn notice and the charger literally driving off into the sunset. This episode helped define the relationship of Mike and Fee, and also with Maddie, and the clients did grow to enjoy Mike's help, and we also got another piece of the puzzle for the burn notice. This episode begins with Mike and Sam going over local sports trivia when Mike sees Yawn, an assassin that Mike has done dealings with in the past, which forces Mike to create a distraction by picking a fight with a patron. And during the scuffle, he knocks out the assassin. And now that he's spooked about the assassin, Mike rigs a shotgun to the front door. Maddie then calls Michael, talking about the garbage disposal being out of whack, but before Michael leaves, Sam shows up and we begin to see a rift in their friendship because he is informing to the FBI. Next we see Mike go to Maddie's house, and once inside, he is attacked by his brother Nate. They go over his backstory about how he is addicted to gambling, and Mike finds out that Maddie tricked him in order for Mike to see his brother. And in typical Nate Weston fashion, he gets Mike to work on a job, trying to rescue a friend of Mike's daughter. And it is interesting that the client is the same age, or at least similar to Mike, and he looks way older. Anyway, this is Bill Reese trying to get his daughter back. She got involved with a smooth-talking recruiter to be a model. Next, Sam shows the information he got about the smooth talker, that his name is Brandon, and he hangs out at a bar, where Mike, Nate, and Fee go to look for him. And Nate nearly ruins it before it even starts, which becomes a recurring theme for Nate. He is very dedicated in trying to help Michael out anytime he can. Unfortunately, Nate ends up screwing up more than he helps. But due to Mike's intervention, they find out where Brandon is, and Fee leads him back to his car, where Mike threatens him to find the daughter. That's when we find out she's about to be sold into sex trafficking. And during the transition to the loft, we see something that Burn Notice is known for. Their transitions. They just showed a hot girl in a bikini just to go to the loft. Now, in earlier episodes, they would show girls in bikinis or, hot women. However, it normally ended up at the beach or in the pool. But this is the first time that transition doesn't make sense. Anyway, back at the loft, Mike and Sam go over the owners of the sex trafficking ring, and we cut to Fee finding Jan at a hotel, and we further see the wedge in Mike and Sam's relationship because Mike isn't being honest about what's going on in his life. And we're introduced to Mike's obsession with yogurt. Most of the time, it's blueberry.
No big secret, just love yogurt.
But Mike still goes to the hotel and gets ambushed by Jan. Mike ultimately wins by escaping in an elevator, which he knows Jan would not follow to potentially murder him due to the people riding the elevator. This does make sense since they know each other, because otherwise why wouldn't an assassin just kill Michael and everybody on the elevator? Also, here's another point for Michael should be dead. After that, Mike goes to an auction where the Wilhelm brothers, the sex traffickers, are to make him noticed enough to get them willing to work together. Nate crashes the party and almost gets Mike on the hook for $15,000. However, Nate guessed right, and Mike gets invited to a party ran by the Wilhelm brothers. Fee then spots Jan leaving the hotel, and Mike devises a plan to sneak into his hotel room using the maid service. Thankfully it works, and he looks through the room to find anything that could be useful. Then we see Sam getting grilled for info on Mike, and the FBI threatens his pension. Afterwards, Mike shows up at the party and gets in contact with Jenna, the daughter, and finds out Jenna is on her way to Dubai, but she is oblivious to what is waiting for her on the other end of the plane trip. And unfortunately, they get intercepted by one of the brothers and get separated, which is bad news for Bill, knowing she could be sold within the week. But Mike and Nate reassure him they will save. Next, Fee and Sam discuss the potential plans, Sam wanting to do it tactfully, and Fee wanting to go in guns blazing. Mike sides with Sam's plan, obviously, because it's safer and easier to pull off. As soon as Sam leaves, they discuss, after going through all of the things that he saw in the hotel, they land on bribing the chef at the hotel. When Maddie calls Mike to get him to rush over because Nate gets beaten up because he owes money to dangerous people, and Mike even tries to help him.
I can help you, Nate. I can get these guys off your back. You can hide out in my place.
I don't need a goddamn place to hide. I can protect myself.
Yeah, blocking punches with your face, real effective.
However, Nate is too prideful, and Nate feels like Mike is treating him like a child, and Nate storms off. Then the team preps the getaway car, and as Mike is finishing up, Maddie tells Mike that Nate is heading to his house. And if Mike doesn't get there in time, Nate is going to figure out what it feels like to have buckshot go through his skull. When Mike arrives, Jan is there to take Mike out. And even with a silencer, Nate would have heard the gunshot, but of course, guns with silencers make no noise. Anyway, Mike is trying to get Nate's attention, and then Mike is shot, also adding another count to the death counter, which ties him up long enough for the rescue plan to fall apart. And after careful deliberation, Sam and Fee call it off, but need to delay the transportation of Jenna, and Sam gets run over by them, forcing them to retreat. Next, Nate pulls the bullet out of Mike's shoulder, showing Nate's enjoyment of putting Mike in pain. When Sam shows up and Mike lies to Sam to keep him in the dark about Jan, Sam does offer to take care of the cops' questioning. Next, Bill tries to storm the Wilhelms' house because of the lack of the call from Michael. And Bill really should have died, considering that the Wilhelms have armed security. But anyway, Mike comes up with an alternative plan, similar to the first one, but the target has changed. Mike and Nate talk about his debtors and contact the other brother, and force them into giving up the info on the girls he pimped.
Pimped? I'm not a pimp.
You say tomato, I say pimp.
Nate tells him what's happening to his brother and also tries to skim some of the money off the top. Thankfully, the prison exchange goes without a hitch, and Jenna is returned home. As she meets her dad, Mike pulls a Batman and leaves without saying goodbye. That's when we see Jan sitting at the hot dog stand. Mike saw the cup of when he was in the hotel, and Jan starts convulsing. He tries to grab an EpiPen, but Mike grabs it before he could get to it, because Michael put peanuts in the hot dog. Mike asks questions, but he doesn't get a lot of answers due to Jan passing out, and Mike administers the EpiPen, locks Jan's leg to the bench, and calls Sam to contact his FBI buddies to pick up Jan and get him an ambulance in Michael's attempt to smooth things over. Lastly, Mike gets a present from the people who burned him. That's when Sam fills Michael in that Jan got Epsteined in prison. More than likely, the people who burned him, killing Jan, and foreshadowing the protection that management has on Michael. This episode did a great job of showing that there are people out there trying to get at Mike, also showing the strength of the people who initiated the burn notice, and a good first showing of Nate. He is always eager to help Mike, being the younger brother and all, and it shows a recurring theme with him. And the episode ends on a cliffhanger, making us want to ask more questions. And I can't believe I went this long without talking about the intro. It does an amazing job of catching people up, providing this show existed before binge watching a series on streaming services. Anyway, it also changes with the season, which is a nice touch. This episode starts with Mike lamenting about his family and Nate getting tossed out of an airplane hangar. And with some smooth talking, Nate gets away, but definitely worse for wear. That's when Michael shows up and Nate reveals that he took a job that forces Mike to help, and also sets up the main conflict for this episode, who actually owns the Charger. Nate believes that it's his because he worked on it, and Mike thinks that it's his because his father gave it to him, and this problem accentuates the relationship they had with their dad. Then we see Mike and Fee working on the Charger and discussing the job and car ownership, and that's when Fee finds a listening device planted by Sam, which starts an unannounced burden between Mike and Sam for the rest of the episode. However, Mike sees it as a benefit knowing who and where they are listening. Next we see Jake Miller, who works at the airport and got bribed by the guys who beat up Nate. And unfortunately, Jake did illegal things for this family. Also, Jake wants to just give the stuff back and forget this ever happened. But Mike knows this isn't going to be that simple. After meeting with Jake, Nate and Mike discuss finding their dad's will to figure out the whole car debacle. Afterwards, we see Mike and Sam doing reconnaissance, and Mike alludes to the listening device, and Sam is trying to play coy when they see the dad, Eli Zamar, smoking and doing a perimeter sweep of the airport, with Michael noting the alarm system and the cameras being top-notch. Unfortunately, Eli spots them, so they have to leave. Mike then uses Fee to gain some intel on the family, where she meets one of the sons, Ari, who is dumbfounded with someone attractive as Fee in the hangar, but she is quickly dispatched by the other brother and Eli. Fee discloses them as arms dealer due to her experience in the IRA. Fee also noticed the father's firearm that is also carried by Mossad, meaning Mike is dealing with an ex-spy. Then Mike talks to Jake and informs him to keep doing the family's bidding until he can get these Zamads busted with the guns. Next, as Mike and Sam are spying on the Zamars, Sam tries to reveal his listening device, but it gets interrupted when the family leaves to visit the warehouse. But the Zamars' guns are in a place that doesn't have many visitors, and Mike gets cornered and assumes he has to fight his way out when Sam saves his butt by acting the drunk, pissed off, and laid off worker. Mike then gives bad news to Jake that it's going to take a little bit longer to take down the family, but to continue working for them because...
Well, since they're probably planning on killing you if you say anything else, I'd suggest yes.
Back at the loft, they are trying to figure out the plan, with Fee cheekily adding to bug Ari's car. We then meet Debbie, Ari's girlfriend, and Sam bugs Ari's car while he is eating. And as Sam is using the bug, Mike comes back to the loft in order to make fake C4 and homemade actual C4 in an attempt to gain Ari's trust when Sam walks in with the cover ID, which is Steve Remington. Okay, seriously, what is Michael? Is he an action figure? Honestly, it doesn't make any sense that Ari didn't see through this facade. His name might as well be Chad America. There is no way Ari is this stupid. Anyway, Mike then goes to Maddie's house to help with the cover ID, and Nate is there combing through paperwork, and we also get some more backstory on Mike's past, but is short-lived because Mike goes to Ari's favorite club to meet with him, and by ordering his favorite wine shows that Mike would be a good companion. He also uses what he learned from the bug so that Mike and Ari can become fast friends. We also get hints of Debbie's lust for Mike. However, Mike introduces Ari to his business, with Mike leaving his card when Ari's brother shows up, who honestly I don't think actually gets a name. That is a little weird that they never actually name him. He's just always Ari's brother. However, Ari does call Mike, and he shows the fake C4 and uses the homemade stuff as a demonstration. This does convince Ari to join in, and back at the loft, Fee acts somewhat jealous of Debbie. However, Mike does dismiss this. Fast forwarding a bit, goes to meet with Ari and convinces him to show Mike the warehouse. Then Mike and Sam talk about the bug in Mike's car, which Mike has an alternative to the bug by letting Sam break into the loft, which is the same documents that he procured from a spy in an earlier episode. Back at the airport, Ari hits Jake to motivate him, and back at the club, Debbie meets with Mike to try to seduce him. Unfortunately, Ari does show up with a gun to Mike's chest, adding another number to the death count. However, Mike talks his way out of a 6-foot deep forever nap and convinces Ari Mike isn't trying to get at Debbie, and with this, Mike gets taken to the warehouse while being followed by Fee, where Mike sees the guns and finds out that the family has ties to the police and also have them on the payroll, complicating the plan and forcing Jake to have to talk to the family about Mike to scare Eli. And in the meantime, Sam breaks into the warehouse to steal the guns, leaving the business card as a cheeky way to say, "I'm watching you," which pushes Eli over the edge, and he finds the bug in Ari's car, all but forcing the family to flee. Then we see Mike talking to the family and letting them understand what actually is going on and how to deal with it going forward. After that, Sam talks to the FBI and shows them the documents that he found in Mike's loft. Sam gets informed that the FBI are off Michael's case and that some other agency is going to be watching him, which is a good idea. It shows us that the people who burned him have a lot more power power than we previously thought. And during this exchange, Sam finds this girl who is Veronica. She kind of becomes a reoccurring character, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Finally, at Maddie's, Mike and Nate settle whose car by flipping for it. And of course, Mike wins, and Nate tries to steal Mike's wallet. This episode is basically filler, besides the Sam spying on Mike motif and the FBI leaving this episode. And it's mostly about the car besides the case. Still a good episode. Just wanted more about the burn notice. This episode begins with Michael coming home to a team that had already broken into the loft and left to harass Maddie, who calls Michael almost immediately after arriving home, forcing Michael to rush over to her, where he finds a team busting up the place that Michael dispatches rather quickly. Then we meet the replacement for the FBI tail in Jason Bly.
I'm the new man in your life.
And Michael doesn't learn this until the end of the episode, but I feel like I can talk about him now. He is a CSS agent basically sent to piss Mike off until Mike inevitably gains the upper hand, shooing him off for at least a little bit. However, he does get some character development. Unfortunately, he is a lesser villain in the grand scheme of things. He isn't as formidable as some of the foes in later seasons. However, he is more capable than the FBI. Anyway, he threatens Mike in an attempt to make him stay away from finding out who burned him. Next, we see Mike talking to Sam at a hotel pool, debriefing about Bly's visit, and due to the fact that Bly messed up Maddie's house, Mike needs a job, and luckily, Sam has one. It's a repo job. Afterwards, Mike at the loft drives his new surveillance crazy by babbling nonsense on his phone in an attempt to figure out exactly who's following him. After that, we meet Virgil, an ex-Navy SEAL buddy of Sam's, explaining the job to Mike. However, Virgil makes this job sound super easy, but if we know anything about this show, it won't be easy. And Mike reluctantly takes the job after Bly takes the charger. Next at the marina, Mike finds the boat and comes up with his cover ID, with Sam calling the cops in order to cover Mike's story, and it helps with the acquisition of the boat, mostly because Andre's men can't shoot it out with the police around. After Mike leaves, he finds a GPS tracker that they destroy before delivering the boat. Afterwards, Michael meets up with Mason, the guy who hired Virgil in the first place. And unfortunately for Mike, he's ready to kill for that boat. However, Mike creates a distraction by setting fire to the shop, which honestly sounds like a very bad idea, considering there is a barrel of chloride directly behind him, which increases Mike's death count because he should be dead along with all of the guys. But he gets away with it, with Sam driving them to safety, where they meet up with Virgil to discuss Mason. This is when Mike puts the two and two together that they are dirty cops who have Virgil's daughter basically kidnapped by the law. After some back and forth, Mike does decide he is better off sticking with the job. However, Virgil now needs a place to stay, and of course, they stick him at Maddie's, which we see Maddie and Virgil start to get into a relationship, and while this is happening, Sam and Mike are trying to figure out what's so special about this boat. After that, we see Mike and Fee scanning the loft for bugs, and this is where Fiona hijacks the conversation to talk about their relationship, with Mike going over what happened years ago in Ireland, furthering their backstory in an organic way, and Mike does get a few things off his chest. However, they use a camera to find an optical bug, and they just so happen to find it on the first window they take a picture of. Pretty convenient, but they dispatch catch it rather quickly. That's when Sam finds money in the boat. The next morning, as Mike arrives at Maddie's, Maddie goes over her relationship with Virgil with Michael, which doesn't sit well with him. And I mean, anybody's a better father figure than his father, who would beat him mercilessly. But anyway, they get the money out and surmise it's $10 million in what's suspected to be drug money, forcing Mike to meet with Mason. And during this meeting, Sam and Virgil dump the boat when Andre's men ambush them and they barely get away. While all of this is happening, Mike is talking with Mason about Mike and Andre's men all meeting together with the money. Unfortunately, Andre's men aren't keen to talk to Mike. Something about stealing their $10 million, I don't know, kind of gives them a bad taste in their mouth. Mike now has to fend off Mason long enough to set things in motion with Andre. And unfortunately, Mason is playing the ultimate card by getting Virgil's daughter arrested for some trumped up charges. And with everything going on, Mike still needs to deal with Bly and his men. So he breaks into his hotel to leave an electromagnet in order to fry Bly's laptop. Next, Virgil and Maddie go on a date, even with Mike's explicit instructions that they shouldn't leave Maddie's house. And meanwhile, Mike meets with Andre to discuss the money with Mike, and Mike learning that Andre is just a middleman, and without the money, he's sunk. No pun intended. However, Virgil spots Andre's men and retreats. He does get a few hits in until another guy subdues him and brings it to Mike's attention during that meeting. And it is a little weird that Virgil says Madeline's name on the phone, presumably in front of Andre's men, tipping them off that Virgil was with somebody else at the restaurant. I mean, he is an ex-Navy SEAL. I figured he wouldn't give out more information than he really needed to. A little weird. However, they agreed to meet up the next day for a prisoner exchange. And while Mike and Fee are loading up the money, they go over the plan for tomorrow, and that's when Bly finds out Mike broke into his hotel and Fee follows him. The next day, Mike preps the stage for the meeting when not just Andre, but Mason shows up. However, Mike created basically a dead man switch using an accelerant and a butane torch. When tempers flare, everyone starts shooting, adding another death to Mike's count, right before Mike sets the money on fire and drives off. After all that happens, Mike, Sam, and Virgil end up back at Maddie's house to divvy up some of the money that wasn't burned up. And Virgil, relenting, his daughter is free of Mason's hold, with Mike shooing Virgil away for his and Maddie's safety. And Sam does get the charger back as a thank you for doing this job. Finally, Mike meets up with Bly at a bar, and he pisses Bly off so that he can pickpocket him, mostly to get his badge, to finally figure out who he's dealing with. This episode was a great way to introduce a new villain that is more impressive than the FBI, but also just as susceptible to Mike's games. It also introduced Virgil as a potential love interest for Maddie. However, it doesn't go very far, but it was an interesting bit of character development. Nonetheless, unfortunately, we don't learn anything new about the burn notice, and that does kind of suck because every episode you feel like you want to get more information about the burn notice. This episode begins with Michael using Bly's information to basically just piss him off, with Bly countering by calling the police on Fee, who is in a stolen car. And to make matters worse, she has unregistered guns in her trunk. Now, obviously, Mike does save her, and they ditch the car in order to meet at the loft. When they get back together, they talk about Bly and also trying to get a job. This is when Mike meets with Ernie, a store owner being terrorized by a gang. Ernie then talks about the leader and also name drops Javier, who you may remember from the pilot, which is good attention to detail and a great way to show continuity. This is where Ernie offers $20,000 to get rid of the gang, and we get Michael's famous whistle. And as Mike leaves to plan, Sam calls with a problem Bly has been feeding Veronica info on Sam, accusing him of cheating, to basically stir the pot for him, which does make it necessary for Mike to meet with Sam and Fee to discuss the job and simultaneously try to find a solution with the Bly situation. Next, we see the team doing recon, and we see Concha, the boss. We also see her ruthless tactics, and that she is no mere pushover. Afterwards, the team observe the gang shaking the town down to get a better understanding, and we also see Concha's lieutenant, Diego. And back at the loft, Fee and Mike discuss possible solutions, with Fee also threatening Mike that after this is all said and done with the Bly situation, she's going to beat Mike up if they don't talk about their relationship, showing obvious tension due to their past. Mike then goes to the store and convinces Ernie to bust up the counter in an attempt to convince the gang to leave the neighborhood, and giving one of the best lines.
Yeah, but my friend said you could fight. He said you were, special forces.
Bullets don't bounce off my skin, Ernie.
As he destroys everything, he is noticeably gentle with the flowers, which is actually pretty funny. And after that, two guys try to mess Mike up, but easily dispatches them. As the gangsters lick their wounds, Diego scolds them, giving Fee and Sam time to talk about the problems set up by Bly. And Fee helps Sam to attempt to get back into the good graces with Veronica. As Mike returns to the loft, Bly is waiting, and we also learn about Mike's glasses.
Maybe it's the sunglasses. Where did you get them?
Oh, an Algerian special ops guy I tangled with a while back. He didn't need them anymore. I'd be willing to part with them if you'd be willing to tell me why I got burned.
Bly then offers a job for Mike as a security guard at a bank, which could be interesting to think about.
He's here. The stalker.
He's not a stalker.
This is a robbery. Stay quiet, follow our orders, or people die.
Wait. That's next season. But this show has an interesting way of foreshadowing. However, this exchange forces Mike to move forward with trying to get Bly off his case by recruiting Barry and creating a fake business with Bly. Mike meets with Ernie briefly to discuss what's happening in the neighborhood, with Mike reassuring that they have to stay the course. And next we see Mike disabling a car and pouring paint thinner on it in order to create a dead man switch, but also so that he can steal the gang's money, which is successful. However, on his way out, he ends up with a gun to his back, being escorted to Concha by Diego. When Mike meets Concha, he gets a little worked over. This is where Concha reveals she is playing a longer game, trying to run everyone out in order to buy the properties there. But then she offers Mike a job, and he initially turns it down, but Concha forces him to work for her. She then forces Diego to show Mike the ropes, and Diego goes over his background to Mike. While all this is happening, Diego explains the business to Mike, and Mike has other plans and fakes a robbery with Fee, stopping all illegal activity in the neighborhood and thoroughly pissing off Diego. Then, as Mike returns to the loft with Bly already inside and trying to strong arm Mike into agreeing with taking the job, even setting up something with Fee's backstory that does get paid off in a later season, forcing Mike to reluctantly take the job. Afterwards, Mike and Diego debrief with Concha about what happened in the neighborhood, with Diego showing disdain. However, he is dismissed so that Concha can offer Mike the job of killing Ernie in a fire. And unfortunately, Mike does accept, basically just to further his cover ID. Next, Mike convinces Ernie to leave Miami in order to safely finish off Concha. Back at the loft, Mike and Fee build a bomb with them, and as they're building the bomb, they're very flirtatious back and forth to each other, basically just to build suspense of the end scene where they talk about their relationship. Afterwards, Diego and Mike see that the store closed down, and Mike lying to Diego by saying that Concha wanted both Ernie and him dead. However, Diego reveals that Concha wanted him to kill Mike, and as Diego is pleading for for his life, he offers a plan to kill Concha. Then Diego uses the bomb originally for the murder of Ernie to kill Concha, dissolving the gang, and after Concha's death, Mike and Ernie debrief, with Mike even giving back most of the money and Ernie wanting to blab his mouth about what Mike did for him, and Mike quickly shuts that down. After that, Mike then meets with Bly to discuss the job. However, Mike counters with all the side work Mike and Barry did in order to blackmail Bly to give Mike the dossier of Mike's burn notice, with Mike even cheekily driving off with Bly's car. Then Sam calls Mike, informing him that Bly backed off and Fee is ready for the talk that has been building up since the beginning of this show. Eventually they fight and end up sleeping together, and may I add, the fight is actually pretty impressive, with the morning after Bly showing up at the loft with the dossier in hand, giving Mike one more piece of the puzzle. This episode was great, however, it does take Bly off the table, at least for a little bit. He does come back, but very rarely, and I wish we would have had more episodes with him and Mike duking it out. It just doesn't seem like this was the best way to get rid of Bly. I figured if he would have stayed until maybe the finale, it would have made a little bit more sense. But anyway, we also get more information about the burn notice that we don't see it in this episode, but later on in the series we get more information from what Bly gave him. Also, this episode kind of sidelines Sam a little bit, but that doesn't make it lose too many points. This episode begins with Michael meeting up with Fee at her house, and she is jealous of the dossier from the previous episode. Mike then tries to give her closure from the other night, but fails miserably. Next, Mike and Fee go to the beach to relax, which doesn't make sense. Mike hates beaches for their poor cover and inability to hide a gun in a swimsuit. Anyway, Fee has other plans. After Bly was sticking his nose in her business, she opts for being a bounty hunter instead of running guns, with one of her bounties staying nearby. As they see their target, Tom McKee, another bail bondsman, Wayne Ray, is attempting to score on Fee's prize. This is where Mike and Fee split up in order to distract Wayne and catch Tom. Tom then confesses his innocence, playing on Fee and Mike's heartstrings. When they get back to Fee's, Tom remarks on Fee's snow globe. As Fee explains to Mike, Tom is offering double the bounty to clear his name. Then Tom goes over how he got framed for stealing a $2 million brooch that looks like a spider, and that the person who stole it used his access key in order to frame him. After hearing the story, Mike and Fee discuss where he would be staying while working the job, and Mike offers for Tom to stay at Fee's, to the bewilderment of Fee, because she finds it weird that Mike doesn't care that another guy is staying with her, which sets up their conflict for the rest of the episode. Afterwards, Sam meets with Barry to attempt to find who is selling the brooch, and unfortunately the brooch is extremely recognizable, so it won't make it on the market very soon. However, Sam gets a name, Christo. He only has one name, and it's interesting because while Barry and Sam spitfire famous people with only one name, Sam says Spider-Man, which is a reference to Sam's actor being on the original Spider-Man films. Anyway, Barry then explains how to find him, and next we see Christo arriving home and Mike subduing him. Mike then steals the phone and starts calling people to force Christo to give up the information that Mike needs. And after one phone call, Christo sings like a canary, informing Mike about the cellar back at the loft. Mike is going through the dossier when Sam shows up to give him some advice due to Fee ferociously talking to Sam. However, he was asking about the guy who put the burn notice together, a guy named Philip Cowan, who works for the NSA. And for right now, that's all we actually know about him. After that, Mike goes to Fee's to discuss the job, with Fee trying to get Mike jealous by flirting with Tom. Also, Mike inquires for Fee's help in order to force Philip's hand, which Fee suggests using Libyans. Next, back at the hotel where the brooch was stolen, Mike and Sam go over who the thief is, who just so happens to own the hotel and just needed a fall guy. Turns out Lawrence is the man in question because after acquiring the hotel, he isn't able to recoup the money quick enough. As they're explaining this to Tom, Wayne shows back up. Tom and Fee escape, and as Mike is fighting Wayne, he realizes Wayne is too strong for him. However, Fee saves him by using one of her snow globes, which she collects and is brought up sometimes in the series, but it's not super important. However, this forces Tom to stay at the loft, and while they are there, they go over the plan with Tom, with Mike accusing Fee of flirting with Tom. Afterwards, Mike gets Sam to play middleman for him. This gets Sam, as Charles Finley, to meet with Lawrence to discuss the details of the sale of the brooch. Next, in a parking garage, Mike meets with a Libyan named Anwar in order to get him to ask about Philip Cowan. Next, Mike returns to the loft to see Fee and Tom eating dinner and becoming slightly jealous. Then Mike and Sam meet up with Lawrence in order to deal with him, and Mike tries to convince Lawrence to show him the physical brooch to no avail. Lawrence just shows Mike a picture of it. Unfortunately, Mike and Lawrence can't make a deal they both enjoy, causing a bit of a setback. While back at the loft, Mike switches gears to...
Christ, this is turning into a full psych-op campaign.
Next, Mike meets with the Libyans again, where he meets with Anwar, and they discuss a potential partnership, and Mike offers information to Anwar, which he counters, but Mike counters in a better way.
Why don't I just make you tell me then kill you?
You could do that. The information might or might not check out. Torture's unreliable, as you know, and then you'd have to deal with Fiona, who put me in touch with you. More trouble than it's worth, trust me.
And Mike attempts to convince Anwar to help him. Next, we see the team compromise the security measures at Lawrence's place by knocking out the cameras, scattering cigarette butts, and even bribing one of the security guards. Then Lawrence is calling Sam in order to sell the brooch, forcing Mike to meet with Lawrence at the hotel, where Mike sees Christo bloodied and tied to a chair. This is another instance that Mike should have died. Here's one for the counter. However, Mike thinks fast and holds Lawrence hostage, allowing for Mike's escape. However, this foils the original plan, and back at the loft, they discuss possible solutions to their problem. Then Sam meets with Barry, who discloses where Lawrence is going to stash the brooch. Meanwhile, Mike meets up with Anwar to deliver Mike's info and also ensure Philip Cowan would be contacted by them. After that, Lawrence is moving the brooch using SUVs. However, at the bank, Sam is creating a situation that looks like a fake bank robbery in order to get the police involved. Also, Fee gets to block traffic. And for the cherry on top, Mike calls Lawrence to inform him there is a gunman on the roof, forcing his men to take their guns out to sell the fact that the guards are actually doing the bank robbery. This is where the cops find the brooch in Lawrence's possession. We then see Fee and Mike briefly, and they discuss why Mike helped Tom, with Mike admitting he did it for Fee, showing that he actually cares for her. Next, Wayne meets up with Fee in order to give up Tom. However, Wayne calls his boss and realizes Tom is innocent. As Tom is packing up to leave, Philip Cowan calls Mike, angry about the Libyans sending him a fruit basket. Finally, Tom pays them, and Fee shines him off due to her feelings for Mike, and Mike does end up giving her a snow globe, which shows his affection and appreciation. This episode had a great balance of figuring out what was happening with the burn notice and helping the client. We also learn about the man who burned Michael, and it seems like he is close to figuring all of this out. And this episode made great strides in enforcing Mike and Fee's relationship in an extremely organic way. This episode begins with Mike and Fee at a beach. We learn for Mike to observe a contact. Also, Fee mentions her birthday, which does get some payoff. Anyway, the man Mike is noticing is Perry Clark, who is a bureaucrat that can help Mike. However, Mike calls the police on him, basically to see if he is being deceptive towards him. Afterwards, back at the loft, Mike talks with him on the phone in order to set up another meeting with him. Directly after that, Sam calls Mike about a job, and we finally see Sam's Cadillac. However, during the exchange, Sam finds no leads on Mike's bureaucrat. They end up at a mansion with a client, Nick, whose girlfriend gets kidnapped and doesn't have the ransom money. Nick watches mansions, and because of the fact that the owners let Nick use the cars, people believe that he actually has money. With Mike reluctantly helping Nick, unfortunately, he has to talk to the kidnappers, but with Mike listening in order to find a plan, which is to follow one of the underlings back to the stash spot of Nick's girlfriend. And while doing the surveillance, Frey brings up her birthday again. However, Mike is not detoured by this and pegs one of the suspicious customers, which is confirmed when Nick reveals Mike to the henchman, Lucio, forcing Mike to run and Fee to attempt to tase him. Lucio then gets tackled and then aims a gun at Mike with his finger on the trigger. This is where Fee uses a stun gun in order to subdue him. Now, if you know anything about electricity and the human body, you would know that when being electrocuted, your muscles tighten up. Like all of the muscles, like your trigger finger. So this should be a death in Mike's count. However, it doesn't happen, and Mike and Fee bring Lucio back to the loft in order to create some blackmail. Basically in order to make Lucio a double agent working for Mike. This is achieved by faking some photographs and some false documentation, proving to the main kidnapper that Lucio is squealing to the cops. And during the intimidation, Lucio reveals that he is late to talk with Reyes, the boss, which then makes Fee break his foot and then let him go to be the best double agent that he can be. Mike, Fee, and Sam then borrow some fancy toys from Nick in order to sell Fee as a rich socialite, with Sam acting as the bodyguard, enticing Reyes with Lucio's help to make them a new score. After Lucio and Reyes follow Sam and Fee, Mike sets a meeting to talk about the new job and buy some time for Nick's girlfriend. And the director wanted to make this meeting look cinematic and haunting. After he meets with Lucio, Mike then meets face to face with that bureaucrat in order to discuss the burn notice. Unfortunately, Mike can't meet with him and stiff arms the bureaucrat to meet with him at the loft. The next day, Mike poses as a hostage negotiator, remarking that he is not a cop due to his outfit.
And I don't know what the magnification is on your sniper scope, but the label's Armani. Cops don't fit Armani. How do I look? Look good, right?
Then we see Reyes pull up in what the Wikipedia says is a Porsche, but it kind of looks like a Lamborghini. I don't know. It's just a very nice car, which Reyes takes Mike to a spa in order to remove all doubt that Mike is wearing a wire. However, Mike talks down Reyes from $5 million to $3 million, buying the team some time to work on the solution. Fee's back at the house with Nick, who is extremely upset about what's going on with the girlfriend. But Fee, in order to try to take his mind off of it, talks about a gun in a showcase and trying to talk to him about the TV. None of this works until Mike comes back and reassures Nick that they are going to get his girlfriend back. We then see Mike adding a GPS to Sam's shoe in order to find where the girlfriend is stashed. Sam then meets with Reyes about the fake kidnapping and convinces Reyes to reveal the hiding spot, and Reyes begins to brag about the operation. While Sam is meeting with the kidnapper, Mike gets a knock on the door, and are you kidding me? Mike, I know that you're a super spy, and you probably know more about being a super spy than I do. However, do you see that bar lock? It's not connected to anything. Now, this wouldn't be that big of a deal if the door opened outwards, but it opens inward. That lock is absolutely doing nothing. Literally, a couple of episodes ago, Mike rigged a shotgun to his door in order to keep people out, and this is the type of security that he has. who thought this was a good idea? Also, small tangent, in that scene, you really don't see him unlocking the deadbolt. So that was his last line of defense, a lock that can be broken very easily. I mean, you've seen those bar locks before. They don't work at all. Anyway, the guy who knocked is Lucio, informing Mike that the execution of the hostage has been moved from a day to merely a couple of hours. Mike then consoles Nick and creates a flashbang and a thermite bomb in order to break into the hiding spot safely. Sam and Fee go to rescue the girl while Mike meets with Reyes, and Mike says,
Another option for backup is Nick. You guys like that idea?
Which ultimately isn't actually true, because where is Nate? Or, in that case, where is Mike's mom? Actually, he's probably better off doing this solo. Then we see Mike with Reyes, basically trying to get Reyes to take something other than money in order to stall for time, while Fee and Sam go to rescue the girl. And they breach the compound and save the girl using the aforementioned bombs. Sam going akimbo for a short time is interesting, but if you know anything about guns, shooting with two guns is just not practical. You can do it, it's just you're not going to hit anything, but it does make for an interesting scene that will most likely be in the title crawl in the next season, if it's not already in the title crawl of this season. They then call Mike, informing him of the job being completed. Reyes then arrives at the stash spot to unalive the hostage, but gets caught by the police. Back at Nick's, Fee and Sam show up to deliver the girlfriend, and she finds out about Nick's lies. She also hits Nick, which he kind of deserves it. I mean, he's living this lap of luxury, but he really doesn't have the lap or the luxury, so he was deserved to get hit. Also, Sam offers Mike the possibility of borrowing the caddy, which is interesting because that might be part of the foreshadowing. But anyway, the bureaucrat meets with Mike at the loft. This meeting should forward the burn notice, and this can't be a trap at all. Oh wait, the bureaucrat attacks Mike, and Mike grabs the gun under his sink and shoots him in the side, which is interesting because when the bureaucrat stands up, the shot is at center mass, which is weird because there would have been not really a good way for him to shoot him in the chest from where they were wrestling. Anyway, this episode ends without any progress on the burn notice and Mike giving Fee the gun from the case at Nick's as a birthday present. This episode was okay. It barely did anything for the burn notice, but Mike's cover ID really stretched him to being a confident hostage negotiator. Still, this episode didn't wow me, but still pretty decent. This episode starts with Fee shopping, of course, and as she is bragging about the deal she got, Mike reveals his true intentions of shopping. He needs a fake ID, where he goes into a shop with a guy who is about to help Mike. But unfortunately, the store owner, Jumbo, double-crosses him in order to gain a get-out-of-jail-free card. This is when Fee returns, and with some distractions, they get away, unfazed. Mike is getting a fake ID in order to find the man who sent a hitman after him. Back at the loft, Mike is still in handcuffs, and this is where Fee offers him a hairpin in order to escape. Mike saves this in his wallet. Next, Mike meets up with Sam in order to find another ID guy. Unfortunately, the only ID guys that Sam knows could be blacklisted because of Sam's relationship with Mike. However, Sam does have a solution, which is Lucy. Her company can create a better fake ID than anyone else, and she needs a job done. This is where Mike meets up with Lucy in order to propose the barter, which she accepts, and the job is finding an abusive husband, beating on the kid and the wife. And in the words of Mrs. Weston,
Do you really think they can do anything? For two little boys who are being knocked around by their father, Michael would take on the Chinese army, honey.
Mike meets with the wife, Evelyn, to learn about the target. She reveals to Mike everything she knows. It is interesting that the photos she shows to Mike don't have her in them, but with Mike's father being abusive, it motivates Mike to complete the task. Next, Mike goes to Maddie's in order to gather some documents in order to get a good fake identity. We also get more backstory of Maddie's relationship with her late husband. Back at the loft, Sam reveals not much about the target, basically just where he works and where he lives, but he has gone off the grid in order to skirt the authorities. Then Mike meets with Evelyn again to hopefully gain more intel. This is where we see Fee becoming slightly jealous of the new client, but as Mike meets with Evelyn at a beach, and every time I see this scene, Evelyn looks a lot like Carla, but that's next season and I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Mike and Evelyn do flirt a little bit. This is when Mike excuses himself to meet with Sam at the target's house to hopefully find more information on him. However, they soon get ambushed when Mike destroys an AC unit in order to escape. Mike and Fee meet with Evelyn, who is wearing a fresh black eye, motivating Mike further to find the target. Fee shows more jealousy towards Evelyn, even remarking Mike should stay emotionally neutral, which sparks a fight with Fee storming off. That's when Sam meets Mike in order to inform Mike where the target is. He picks up Evelyn, which is weird on account any other time Mike would have done this by himself without the innocent civilian with him. It's very odd that he would do this. Anyway, Mike drives to where the target is, so far away that he needs to get gas. When they arrive, Mike goes to meet with the target and learns that Evelyn played him to get to Doug, the original target. And Mike should have died here because Evelyn had a clear shot. Anyway, as Mike and Doug are holed up in the shack he was staying at, with bullets flying, Mike tries to understand why there's an assassin seeking him. And Doug isn't trained and pokes his head up with Mike.
I need you to stay away from the windows.
Thankfully, Doug's son is away. However, Mike's gun isn't working due to Evelyn disabling it when they stopped for gas. Again, it was kind of weird that he brought the mom with him. Could be considered collateral damage, and I guess this is the reason why they had to have a reason for him to get double-crossed and she had to be there. Anyway, Mike then fixes the gun with Fee's hairpin from the beginning of the episode. This is where Evelyn tries to ram the shack when Mike rigs a propane canister to explode when it's fired on. And a small moment of silence for the charger. Good news, the Charger does make it. After Mike ensures that they're not being followed, Mike asks Doug about his work and realizes Doug is a witness for illegal activity, which is why he is marked for death. Doug also had a wife that was killed due to the mob missing their hit. Fee and Sam show up, and this is where Fee is quick to rub Mike's face in the fact that Evelyn double-crossed him. Sam interjects with the connection with Lucy, prompting Sam to call her, basically to warn her of the impending doom. This is where Sam finds out about Lucy meeting a new client, which is just the sort of thing Evelyn would do, basically moving Lucy in a spot that is easier to hit. Sam drops Mike off and finds Evelyn, who assures Mike isn't in danger of getting killed right then and there. Once Mike sits with her, she reveals that they actually knew each other in the past and she almost got caught by him. Next, she alludes to paying somebody to kill someone, also remarking that Lucy is walking across the street. This is where Mike slide tackles her in order to save her from the hit that Evelyn orchestrated. And with this distraction, Evelyn gets away. Then, back at Lucy's work, Mike patches Lucy up. This is where Evelyn calls Mike, and this is where Mike gets a safe ticket for Lucy, but Evelyn threatens Sam, Fee, and even Maddie. Next, they're all back at the loft, explaining everything to Doug, who is scared she may come to the loft, but Mike squashes that idea rather quickly because she won't fight on Mike's turf. Fee suggests to go after her, but Mike doesn't want to go off and become exposed, which is smart thinking on his behalf. And this is where Mike asks Sam and Fee if they are ready if Evelyn comes after them, which they quickly confirm that they could. However, Mike also remarks on the fact that his mom and brother are on the chopping block, and Fee Fee and Sam agree that they also need to have a plan. This is where Mike explains everything. He wants to get Doug into witness protection, giving the responsibility of calling the U.S. Attorney General to Sam, who also is sent to Maddie's in order to protect her. And Fee goes to secure the escort, and
Doug, I need you to stay away from the windows.
as Sam is staying at Maddie's, Maddie has some questions about why Sam is there. Although Sam lies to Maddie, she sees right through it. Back at the loft, Mike and Fee discuss what is happening with the job and the fact she wants to help Mike. However, Mike is very hesitant because of the feelings he has for her and doesn't want her to end up dead. But Fee is willing to fight. They also briefly talk about Philip Cowan, a major player in the burn notice. Next, Mike, Sam, and Fee prepare for the transportation of Doug, who is wearing Sam's bulletproof vest. Doug also tries to thank Mike.
Yeah, you can thank me by keeping your head down and staying away from windows, okay?
Then they transport Doug with Evelyn setting up on a roof with Sam and Fee in the crosshairs. Next, Mike holds Evelyn at gunpoint in order to save Doug's life. Evelyn still tries to tempt Mike, but Mike doesn't give in to her. And during the conversation, Evelyn wonders how Mike found her.
Istanbul wasn't that long ago. You like rooftops over windows? You like angles with the target on your right-hand side because you're left-handed.
Mike then tries to capture Evelyn when she jumps off the roof, which is really the first unintentional death in this series. Mike does take it slightly hard initially. Anyway, Lucy meets with Mike in order to debrief and ensure Mike knows that Doug and his son are both safe. She also drops off the fake ID, and as she leaves, Sam shows up and dissuades Mike from going to DC because Philip Cowan is coming down to Miami. This episode was a great penultimate episode. It really focuses on Mike and the difficulty of trying to meet with the man who burned him. Also, this episode began with somebody acting like they were going to help Mike, but stabbed him in the back, foreshadowing Evelyn's betrayal. Also, I find it interesting that Evelyn meets Mike wearing a white dress to then change to all black after she is found out. And as she kills herself, she goes back to the white, symbolizing her good and evil sides and how she portrays acting as the good or bad side, which, I mean, I could just be looking too closely into it. Which is also interesting. This is the last time we actually see Lucy. I think every now and then they reference her, but it's very slightly. Also, this episode ends with a great cliffhanger to set up the two-part finale where we finally get to see the man who burned Michael. This episode begins with Mike doing armed sit-ups, and as paranoid as Mike is, not just in this episode, but in all of the episodes previously, it is weird to think that he would keep the door unlocked. Sam shows up and seemingly doesn't have to unlock anything. It is very weird, especially since Philip Cowan sent an assassin literally a couple of episodes ago. But anyway, Sam walks in and gets startled by Mike waving a gun in his face. Which I mean makes sense. If my friend pulled a gun on me, I'd probably be a little bit upset as well. Also, Sam is cheating on his diet, proposed by his lover, which is never brought up again. However, during this meeting, Mike reminds Sam the lengths that Philip Cowan will go in order to get to Mike, but also Sam has a new job, which Mike has to pass on due to his life being a little too complicated. As this meeting ends, Mike gets a text from Cowan in order to meet. Sam gets invited as backup. During the stakeout, Sam gets a little antsy about Cowan not showing up, and Mike moves to where he believes Cowan is, where he finds a card left by Cowan. This is when Mike gets a first look at Philip Cowan and informs Mike the meetings are between him and Mike only, no backup. Cowan leaves and Mike meets with Sam and Fee back at the loft in order to go over Cowan and explain why they don't just meet. This is because Cowan distrusts Mike and vice versa. Sam then excuses himself to meet with his client, Jillian, who informs Sam of her job and how she is being blackmailed into allowing drugs to be moved through the company unchecked. However, not only Jillian is being blackmailed, but also Melissa, one of her co-workers, who is scared to talk to Sam. However, they do get a little bit of information to work with. Next, Mike responds to a call from Maddie about a weird phone call.
All he said was Van Buren Avenue, and then he hangs up.
And Mike tries to act coy, but Miss Weston sees right through this little charade that Mike has. Then Nate shows up due to Maddie's weird phone call.
It's all a big mystery.
She decided to circle the wagons. And of course, Nate begs for money from Mike. Next at the Carlito, Sam hires Fee to help with this client. Sam found some info on Melissa's mystery man, who is the blackmailer, and also her lover, that Melissa used to cheat on her husband. Afterwards, Mike is on Van Buren Avenue, looking for another clue in order to meet with Cowan. This is where Mike finds a guy in a very interesting way. The guy is reading a tourist guide to Madison, Wisconsin. That's brilliant. M.W. Michael Weston. The showrunners did a really good job of making it believable that Mike would find this guy, but nobody else would bother him. Anyway, that guy leaves Mike a note to set up a meeting, but only divulges the weekday and time with a cutout of one of Mike's missions, most likely to inform Mike where to actually go. This is when Sam and Fee go to the bar, and it's highly unlikely that Melissa met the blackmailer there. Mostly because the bar is a kind of men's-only bar, which should have been a red flag that something was not right. But Sam charms the barkeep and the fellow patrons and find info about the blackmailer. That's Ray Wagner. Then Fee and Sam confront Ray, where he tries to deck Sam, and while Fee and Sam are asking questions, they put the pieces together that Melissa isn't a victim, but the blackmailer, who is working with her husband. This is when Sam meets with Jillian in order to explain what's going on, and how they're going to enlist the help with Mike, who is fixing the charger, which is a great attention to detail that most TV shows would have glanced over. The fact that last episode his charger windshield exploded. Anyway, Sam needs Mike to pass as a Green Beret in order to talk to Melissa's husband, basically to scare him to back off of Jillian. Next we see Kent, Melissa's husband, leave a gun range to find Mike leaned up against his truck, forcing Kent to become slightly offensive. But Mike quells this by pitching a thriving business opportunity. Mike also uses his info on Kent to intimidate him, but also tries to influence him to work for Mike, even leaving his card to Kent. Next, Sam is wiring a duplicate phone to listen to Kent's conversations, and while Fee is planting the listening device, Sam is distracting Melissa, and this is where my suspension of disbelief has to kick in. It's believable that Fee swaps the SIM card in the phones in order to make the new phone have the old number. That makes sense. However, what doesn't make sense is that the new phone doesn't have the contacts, the messages, the phone log, the wallpapers, just the little things that would make Kent a little bit suspicious. Plus, he is kind of a drug dealer. This could be one of his burner phones that could go dark sooner than they would like. Anyway, Mike listens in to what Kent is saying and hears about his meeting with him. As Mike is informing Sam about this, Maddie bursts into the loft, yelling to Mike about Nate carrying a gun and protecting her. Maddie asks to speak to Mike alone, where he informs her that the situation is extremely complicated, and we get to see a little bit more of the family dynamic between Mike and Maddie. She really doesn't understand what is going on with Mike. However, as the loving mother she is, she does want to know more about him. Unfortunately, Mike needs to keep this a secret from her. It's Mike's ability to compartmentalize that puts a strain on their relationship. This happens multiple times in the series. This is one of the biggest first times that it happens. However, Maddie leaves unsatisfied.
Get yourself some furniture, Michael. I didn't raise you to live in a warehouse and eat off a bench.
Then Mike meets with Kent to discuss the details of the job. This is where Kent gets very defensive about Mike and even pulls a gun on him, which Mike dispatches rather quickly, which is even more impressive because Kent is a Marine. Anyway, after the fight, Mike leaves with another hole in the windshield of the Charger. Back at the loft, Jillian hears Kent's plan for her is to be unalived, and that Kent is extremely concerned about Mike's role. After that, Sam informs her she needs to play ball with Kent, basically in order to stay alive. This is where Sam is watching Jillian, Fee is monitoring the bug, and Mike is waiting to meet Cowan. That is until things get a little too interesting when Kent alludes to putting something on Jillian's car, forcing Mike to abandon his meeting with Cowan, but not before leaving a clue to reschedule. And this scene is kind of weird. Why couldn't Fee handle this situation by herself with Sam? I know Sam doesn't have signal for his phone, but Fee and Mike show up at the same time, so why couldn't she have just met Sam? Anyway, Sam watches Jillian load the drugs into a white van, and before the van leaves completely, Mike and Fee arrive. This is where Mike comes up with a plan. He sends Sam to the guard shack as he climbs the fence to defuse the bomb on Jillian's car. And this scene always leaves me holding my breath. The editing and the music is just perfect. It really induces that grade A suspense, just top notch. To right before Jillian starts her car, you just know that Mike is not gonna make it, but then he does. Back at the loft, Jillian is presented with the knowledge she almost died, and they get Jillian out of town until the smoke clears. Meanwhile, Mike and the team plan to gather evidence they would need to take Kent down. After this meeting, Fee and Mike discuss why he's doing this dance with Cowan, and this angers Fee because she cares for him and wants to be with him, and if Mike goes back to being a full-time spy, she won't have a place in Mike's life, which is a good bit of character development in such a very small scene, and it does work pretty well. Next, Sam and Fee get set up to record the buy in order to bust Kent, who shows up and is waiting for the buyers. Meanwhile, Mike is waiting at the meeting place. However, he gets a phone call from Cowan informing him that he needs to go back to the first meeting spot in 10 minutes. So Mike has to run a mile or so in a suit in under 10 minutes, which understandably is pretty impressive. However, back at the buy, Melissa and Kent have a small disagreement. Right before they're about to leave, they get blown up by an RPG. The buyers are the ones that killed them, and Sam gets kidnapped. Talk about your bad days. Also, Fee gets chased until the only option she has is to jump off a bridge. This is a great way to increase the tension for this episode. Next, Mike finally gets to meet with Cowan face to face. This is where he reveals that he wasn't the only one who burned Mike. Unfortunately, there is an entire organization, and as soon as Cowan reveals this, he gets shot to silence Cowan before he can reveal anything like management or Carla or possibly Vaughn, but these are future things that I'm not going to worry about until we get to it. However, the person who took the shot puts Mike's back against the wall because immediately the police show up. This is where Mike has to escape, and thankfully he gets some help from Nate to get a clean getaway. When Nate rescues Mike and brings him back to the loft, Mike debriefs a tad, then notices plenty of people that could potentially be watching him, and as they're leaving, Fee calls to inform Mike about the busted drug buy, and she gives him just enough information in order to find her and how Sam is captured, ending the episode with "to be continued." This episode is the perfect way to begin the finale of the first season. There is so much suspense and how Mike is closer to the truth, but also simultaneously so far away from it. And this goes to the testament of the showrunners who at least let us know what was going to happen in a week's time, unlike other shows that would would make viewers wait for months to find out what actually happened at the end of the episode, which really is something that I enjoy about this spy drama, is that they leave us with more questions than answers, a problem I have closer to the end of the series, but we'll get to that later. This episode treated us to the back and forth of Mike and Cowan paralleling the relationship with the client, making us believe that there was a double cross. However, the following week we will see the part 2 to this episode. This episode starts just as the other one ended. Fee in trouble, Sam captured, and just when Mike was going to learn something new about the burn notice, his contact gets shot. Now Mike has to rescue Fee in order to save Sam. This starts with Mike and Nate arguing about usefulness as they make it to Fee's location, where Fee leaves a marker so Mike can find her, and he uses the truck to smash the warehouse. Luckily, Fee doesn't get hurt. This is when Nate covers the doorway they just created, all while Mike and Fee build a bomb, and Mike talks about how he uses a slow truck to trap the bad guys. Meanwhile, Mike, Fee, and Nate escape. Unfortunately, the people who burned Mike know where he lives, so they have to set up shop in a foreclosure. This is where Mike promptly gets Nate to pick up Maddie, and Mike is keen on Nate not being followed when...
I know how to lose a tail. All right, I hate to break it to you, but spies aren't the only people with enemies.
Next, we see Sam being beat up by a muscular man as he is being questioned. This is where we meet Herrick, the brains of the operation. However, Sam doesn't fold under interrogation and even tries to accuse one of Herrick's men for being a double agent, but it doesn't work. We also learn that the guys are ex-Green Berets. They also threaten Jillian from the last episode, and spoiler alert, we never see her again. Back at the safe house, Mike and Fee gear up to siege the Green Berets when Mike gets a call from them, and thinking on his feet, he comes up with a cover ID basically on the spot where he's posing as competition and asks for proof of life, which Sam uses to communicate to Mike, who then has to go to a storage facility to find a picture fitting the pose. They find the picture and figure Sam is trying to warn them to stay away. This is probably the most interesting way to communicate without words. This is when Nate returns with Maddie, who is very upset she has to leave her house, with Mike trying to explain.
Who is it? I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. Covert intelligence agencies don't call you up and tell you why they're hunting you.
Then Mike forces the team that shot Cowan to reveal themselves by calling his old handler, which is the last time he is referenced in this series. As Mike and Fee watch a decoy team, they observe the real team and almost get picked up by them, and Mike gets away. And really, this show wants me to believe that Mike can outrun a car, really, but Mike shakes them by stranding a motorist. Back at the safe house, Herrick calls Mike to pressure Mike into meeting. However, Mike stalls them. Sam is confronted with Herrick and tries to get them to kill him, basically in order to keep Mike away from this situation. However, they don't bite on this. Next, Mike meets with Barry, and Mike is a lot more forceful in this interaction than he normally is with Barry, scaring him, which puts a weird wedge in their relationship that we see in the next season. Barry helps Mike get in touch with Carmelo, a hotshot heroin dealer. This is when Barry gets a call for Mike, and this is the first time we hear Carla's voice. But Mike blows her off and ditches the phone in the water. Next, Mike makes small explosives wired to a detonator when Maddie interrupts, and Mike forces her and Nate to leave town before the bullets start flying. This is when we see Carmelo in a club that Mike has rigged to blow on a dead man switch in order to get intel where the Green Berets are. And during their meeting, Mike does a great job at threatening Carmelo.
If you don't do what I want, I will rain hell down upon you until one of us is dead, and I am really, really good at raining down hell.
Also, he doesn't use a cover ID.
Who are you? I'm Michael Weston.
I used to be a spy.
Carmela reveals the location of the heroin dealer, and Mike and Fee scout the location, also setting a meet in order to lower the manpower on the boat when he infiltrates it, which is very ingenious. Sam also tries to get killed again, but fails again. Mike and Fee also build a sticky bomb for their infiltration, and as they're about to leave, Maddie reveals a few times where Mike rejected the rules and laws, and we get a little bit of backstory of Mike and Nate. Then Mike tries to drop Maddie and Nate off in Fort Lauderdale. That is until Mike realizes that they are being followed, where Mike plays the second game of chicken in this episode, threatening to shoot himself when Carla calls and he gets some time to save Sam. Next, Mike takes the Cadillac in order to save Sam, and we get the trope of Mike and Fee having their final kiss. That happens most seasons, especially during the finale. However, on the boat, Herrick sends his men to meet with Fee and Mike as they set up at the docks. Fee as the marksman and Mike as the infiltrator. And while Mike is going through the water, not a single one of Herrick's men notices the fact that there is a bunch of bubbles floating up to the top, and no one sees that as suspicious. Also, Mike throws his grappling hook that makes a loud ding right as one of the Green Berets walks past. So he didn't hear that either. Alright, fine. It's a TV show. Anyway, Mike is able to set up beautifully as Mike leaves his phone in the hallway so that when Herrick calls, it distracts him, so Mike can get the drop on him. During the struggle, Fee covers Mike, and even Sam helps by slamming the door on Herrick's head. Mike shoots Herrick and leaves with Sam. And this scene is so funny to me. As Mike and Sam escape the boat, they both have completely different running styles. Mike is very tactical and precise, as Sam is flailing his hands over his head and looking like this is the first time he has ever ran in his entire life. But they do get away safely, and while debriefing in the caddy, Sam mentions to Mike about the OnStar, which could potentially be a shameless plug, but Mike gets instructions to go to a specific location, which is a tractor trailer that leads Mike into the next season. This episode was a great way to end the season, just the way I like spy thrillers to end, with more questions than answers. This season also did a good job of establishing the status quo of this series. Very much a learn a little bit about the burn notice, help people learn a little bit more about the burn notice. I also just wish that in this first season we would have seen more of Jason Bly. I feel like he would have been a more interesting character if he would have stayed longer. But in this next season we're going to get Carla and some other interesting characters that will be presented later on in the season. Thank you for watching. If you're curious about an FBI team that uses psychology and sociology to solve murders, check out my other series, Inside Criminal Minds. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe.